Awesome. Okay. So are you just gonna start launching poll questions while I introduce myself? I love it. So if I say this afternoon, just know that I'm in California. It's not quite nighttime here yet, but we're getting there. So I am Ann Laguzza. I'm very excited to be here. I am the CEO of the Works Consulting. I have had the pleasure of being in human resources and leadership development for 30 years come January 1st of 2021. I've owned my own company for 20 years come January 1st. So while I was an in-house HR director, I worked with a number of different types of companies. I never really stayed with one industry. I worked in service. I worked for a family-owned business. I worked for a large Fortune 500 company. So I had a lot of, I worked for an entertainment company that was a smaller company. So I had a lot of experience from large, very corporate to family owned to small companies. And I feel, and like I said, in all industries, entertainment and service and distribution. And I feel like that experience really benefited me quite well. So that when I did start my own business 20 years ago, that I was ready to help a variety of clients. So my practice today is still set up very similar to the way I set up my career, which is I work with all different types of clients on their human resources and sort of leadership needs. And yeah, so that's kind of what we do. And we love it. So today we kind of carved out some special stuff for you. We're going to start sort of with the interviewing piece. And then, like Julie said, talk a little bit about policies and procedures. It's a little about payroll, a little about benefits. I absolutely would love any questions you guys have if I don't see them come up. I mean, we'll catch them at the end, but please feel free. You don't have to wait till the end. Just if I'm saying something and you're like, oh, I got a question about that, just throw it in there. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna share my screen, and I think they're gonna throw some polls up here in a bit.
Yeah, we're gonna do them right now, Ann.
One right now. Okay, well, perfect. That'll be good while I'm getting this all set up. Okay, have you ever seen an HR person drunk at the annual holiday party? Can't wait for your responses on that one. Okay, I'm gonna switch my settings here so you can actually see the right slide. So you guys, you have a poll in front of you and just click yes or no. I get to take it, I think, too, possibly here. So I'm excited about that. Okay. So on your screen, you have my contact information. I'm very, very involved in social media, and I would highly recommend that you follow me on one, if not all of my channels. I do provide a ton of information out there pretty much almost every day. Okay, we have 100% that the HR person drunk at the annual holiday party. All righty. Well, that was never me, thank goodness. I never went that route. But I do know that it's a very common thing. I think we talked about it on Julie and Corey's podcast, in that, HR is not always the career that people think it's going to be. And when I've taught human resources professionals, I taught for 7 years at at a college out here in California. One of the very first questions I was asked in the evening was just about how many of them got into HR because they like people. And then when many people would raise their hand, I would say, well, this may not be the profession for you, because it is about the people, but it isn't really. There's a lot of tough decisions you have to make and a lot of stressful information that you might have to hold on to. And you are really, if you're a good HR professional, you're really not friends with anyone in the company. You're friendly to everyone, friends with no one, which is not always an easy place to be. So anyway, back to my social channels. If you would follow me on any of them, I put out a ton of content. Some of it overlaps a little bit, but we try to keep it fresh. I also do have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and I offer 6 complimentary webinars a year. So if you go to my website, sign up for the newsletter, you can also attend a webinar. So as I mentioned, I have almost 30 years of experience in human resources. My career was quite unique in that my very first opportunity was for a large retail company, and they were in the process of upgrading their HR professional, or that's how they described it. And so I was hired to work in one of their brand new stores. There were 150 employees there, This was my second job out of college, and I had a part-time assistant, and they taught me everything I needed to know about human resources and workshop facilitation. So I had some, retail management experience throughout my college years and before that, but they really hired me just based on the fact that they saw that there was a potential there that I could do the job. And it's quite interesting because today I still view candidates that way. And when we talk about interviewing, that is something that I think is important, is that you look at what someone's potential might be, even if maybe they don't have every single exact skill you were looking for, but you see that there's potential there. You might want to really consider that because it can go a long way. Granted, I'm a little biased and I understand that, but it really can go a long way. And I've seen it work in a lot of other companies as well. Okay, so with that, let's jump in here. So, hey, Ann, when do I need to care about HR? So I get asked this a lot from small business owners. Like, I don't know if do I really need to worry about this? And I will tell you that as soon as you have an employee, you need to care about it. It may vary in degrees who that employee is, how much you need to care about it, but it definitely should be on your radar that you need to start paying attention. One of my all-time favorite clients that I got to work with hired me. He had 6 employees, and they were varying levels of family members, like varying degrees of separation of family members. And I remember thinking, gosh, why are you hiring me? Because this was early on in my, when I owned my own business. And he said, because, managing my family members is probably one of the toughest things I've ever done. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So he established all his HR processes and procedures and put them in place. So as soon as you have an employee, you need to care about human resources. And even if they're your best friend or your family member, you need to start paying attention to it. I have seen many relationships go sour that we thought would never, ever go sour. And it's in your best interest to be paying attention to what you should be doing. It doesn't mean you have to overcomplicate matters, and we'll talk about that a little more in policies, but you should still be thinking about the HR piece as soon as you have an employee. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is creating an effective interview process. And again, feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we will continue to get to those. Okay, so I want to start with hiring the best. Oh, good poll question. Do you hate HR? So hiring the best, why hire anyone less than the best, right? And I actually ask this all the time. So one of the things that we do in my business is we help companies recruit for their new employees, whether it be an entry-level employee all the way to an executive. We help always in that area. So why hire anyone less than the best? Well, commonly I get 2 responses. One is time. And, I just don't have enough time to keep looking, or gosh, the position's been open for so long and I just feel like I need to fill it. Okay, the second answer I often get is morale. Well, the current team, whoever that is comprised of, is overworked, they're tired, and isn't it better just to have someone rather than no one? And I'm going to tell you that both of those answers are not the answers I'm looking for. So time, you must invest time to hire people. This may be one of the most important things you do, is hiring people to work in your business. You have to invest the time. Sometimes it may go a little quicker. You may have very good luck in your hiring, and you may not take that long. And other times it may take longer. One of the things I'm going to suggest that you think about, and you might want to write this down, is if your position's been open for a long time and you cannot find anybody to fill it, there's something wrong there. So either you're not being realistic with expectations, so we would need to look at that, or the question is, do you really need that position filled? Because if you've been able to function for 6 months or longer without it, how is that happening? And why, what do we need to look at? Because it's quite possible you don't need that position. I'm not saying you don't need a position, but maybe the one you're looking for isn't the one you need. Okay, so with morale, I have to mention this. So if you do that, why don't I hire, someone's better than no one? That's absolutely not true. If you hire someone into your company and you have to let them go quickly or let them go after a period of time, this is what happens. So some of my clients will hire or have in the past hired and said, oh, we'll just try them out for a few days and we'll just let them go if they don't work out. Well, of course, fine. If you follow whatever your laws are, absolutely. However, this is what starts to happen. Number one is you could, depending on your industry, start to get a reputation for kind of turning and burning through employees. We did a recruiting project for one of our clients, and I was having a really hard time getting anybody past once I would tell them the company that we were helping with, they would tell me, they would politely decline an interview. And they would say, you know, we understand that that company really burns through their employees, and I don't want to be a part of that. Can you imagine that? Like, you've built up that reputation in your industry, because it's a small-ish industry. But remember, I'm in Southern California, so we were pulling from a lot of areas here. But people were actually declining an interview because the reputation of this company in turnover had gotten so widespread in their industry. So that is definitely something that can happen to you. Another thing that can happen is that you feel like it's better to have someone because that'll help your employees out. But the truth is that it could be harmful to the team. It could really hurt their morale overall to see people coming and going. Employees bond pretty quickly with new hires. And so they start to get kind of personal about it and wondering why this person isn't there. Or maybe even on the worst side of it, they don't sort of embrace this person and help them be a good employee because they feel like, oh, they probably won't be here very long anyway, because that's what the company's taught me. Okay, so not good reasons, right? I don't want you to use time or morale as a reason to hire anyone than the best. So you have to remember, you are hiring someone who's going to care for your vision and your mission. This is like, you're trusting this person with your company legacy. Like, how could you not invest the time necessary to trust the person, to make sure you have a person that you trust to build or to care for your vision and your mission, right? And they're going to take care of your legacy. One of the most important things you're going to do, I seriously cannot stress it enough. We often see that it's where the least amount of time is put into is hiring, but it really needs to be increased, like to one of the most time-consuming activities that you do to make sure that you don't bring people into your company that are not a good match. So frequently, of course, then follow-up question is, well, okay, Anne, that all sounds good, but how do I hire the best? Well, I'm going to give you some tips to help yourself set yourself apart from the competition. So the goal here is to attract the very best candidates, right? We only want the cream of the crop. So how are you going to do this? Well, I'll give you a few steps that you can do right away. So you want to prepare a compelling job posting. This is not the same as putting a job description up on a job search board somewhere. If you read your job posting and you're bored, people are looking at it are going to be bored too. It needs to be engaging and interesting, short enough, to keep people's attention, long enough to give them the information you think is absolutely critical just to get them to apply. This is like your marketing tool, right? So we need to be able to pull them in. You can provide a long job description or whatever you have at a later time, even before you interview them for the first time. But we want to engage people and interest them. No, it doesn't mean you don't want anything. I don't want you to put anything out there that's not truthful, but I want you to really look at it. Is this interesting? Would I want to read through this? Does this make me want to work here? Have I highlighted everything I need to highlight? So there's 3 areas I want you to pay attention to with a compelling job posting. The first is, why does the applicant want to work for you? Okay, so what makes you special? If I asked you right now, what makes you special? Are you, would you, I know we're not literally sitting next to people, but would you point at the person next to you and go, oh, I don't know, I'm just like them? No, you absolutely wouldn't do that. You're going to tell me why people want to work for you. What makes you special? That might mean the type of environment. It might be the industry you're in. It might be the actual company that you work for. It could be all different kinds of things, right? That make it why people want to work for you. When I worked in the entertainment industry, we were a new entertainment startup. We were not paying entertainment wages like most people are used to out here in California. However, we had a very unique product, if you will, in that we were an action sports entertainment company. So surfing and motocross and wakeboarding, etc. There were not at that time a lot of places you could work if you had a passion for those types of sports and the access you had to the world-class athletes and events and etc. Right? So that made us stand out from the rest. And even though our pay wasn't competitive, right? It was still good, but it wasn't competitive to the entertainment industry at all. It gave people who worked for us exposure to an industry that not everybody had exposure to. So you got to think of things like that. Like, what makes you stand out? Some people, leaders, always go straight to the pay, and that's not usually the number one on people's list, believe it or not. It's on the list because they've got to make ends meet, but why else do I want to work for you? Okay, what do you offer that's going to interest the applicant? So in this, area, sometimes people are like, oh, well, we have health benefits, and that's all great, but most people have health benefits. So, and you might not even have health benefits yet, depending on your size. You might be like, oh, we're not even there yet. But what other things do you offer? Do you offer some sort of parking allowance if you're in an area that, there's parking fees? Do you have a flexible work schedule? Anything like that. So things you want to think of. I was thinking of one of the places I worked, we had pretty much once a week team luncheons. Now I know some of those are, moving by the wayside now, but we're sending out gift cards for team luncheons. But things like that, where you want to talk about what do you offer? What are those things that's going to make somebody go, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I think I want to work there. But I would say that even if you have like sort of the run-of-the-mill benefits, certainly mention them because I want to make sure people know, but don't rely on those as the catch, because a lot of times, depending on who your competitors are, that is something they can get everywhere, and we want them to rely on other things. And as I mentioned, even if you don't have those benefits, so if you're sitting there right now going, oh gosh, Ann, I'm not even there yet, right? I don't even have those benefits. There are other things that will make people want to work for you. You just have to figure out what those are. And then who are you specifically looking for? Okay, so this is where your like skills, their attitude, their experience, their potential, right? Maybe you're looking for somebody who's been in a similar industry and you want to write all that out. So who are you looking for? These three areas are really going to help you prepare your compelling job posting. So you're going to be pulling in the right people, right? And it's really going to help you with planning, okay? So I'll get to the last bullet here in a minute, but I want you to write down planning. So this is part of your planning, the why, the what, the who. And then every single applicant you interview, you're going to hold them against the plan, right? And if they don't meet your why, your what, your who, you're not going to move forward with them. Not at all, because you're going to be so confident that you know who you're looking for, that you're not going to need to interview people who aren't who you're looking for, okay? So one of the things that happens a lot in my business is when we do recruiting, people will say, oh, I want to get 2 to 3 candidates that I want to consider. So by all means, I mean, hey, if there are 2 to 3 candidates out there, fantastic, that are qualified candidates. But I never want my clients to interview anyone that's not qualified, because it's a waste of their time. It's a waste of the applicant's time. So if we only have one person who's qualified, if you've done a good job planning, you're going to know like that they are the one for you. You're not even going to need to interview 2 or 3 people, because you're going to know. You already did all your planning. You know exactly who you're looking for. When people start telling me, oh, I need to interview 3 people. One time someone said, I need to interview 5 people. I'm like, 5 people? This was an executive level job. And I'm like, I mean, I can only hope I will have 5 qualified people for you. When somebody says that, what worries me is they don't really know who they're looking for. And what I do, obviously, in my business is we step back and we go back through the why, the what, the who, to make sure that we're really clear on who we're looking for, right? And what it really is, who we're looking for. So we know, because this isn't like testing the waters and maybe that one. Because if you don't know, it's going to take you even longer to find the right person, because you don't know who you're looking for. You're going to find things about each candidate interesting, and you're not going to be able to make a decision. you will meet a lot of people in the interview process that you like. It's very likely. I've met so many people over the years. I mean, I've interviewed thousands and thousands of people in 30 years, right? I've met so many people I like, and many of them are not a match for the position, even though they seem like great people. And I'm like, oh, I wish this person could fit in. Sometimes they're not a match because of salary. Sometimes they're not a match because of location. And sometimes their skills just really aren't a match, but gosh, they're great people, you know, and it just didn't really work out in the end. So know that you're going to meet some amazing people, and they might not be right for you right now. Maybe they'll be right for you in the future though. Okay, and then the last bullet that I wanted to talk about is a really important part of how you get to hiring the best is tell everyone that you are hiring. Everyone. I actually recommend that you get some sort of business card made up that references the fact that you're hiring, maybe the type or types of positions, who to contact. Again, I realize in the world we're currently in, people are a little more hesitant to take business cards from people, but I don't expect that'll be forever. You can use social media, you can come up with an electronic business card, whatever you want to do, but you need to tell everybody you come across that you're hiring. The grocery store, your dentist, your friends, when you're at, when you're at a Zoom, family get together, tell everyone, because you never know who will know someone.
Awesome. We want to do one more poll real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, HR exists to help employees be better. HR is evil. Oh my goodness.
I wish I could answer these questions.
Just to let everybody know that I added the HR is evil.
Yes, of course. So funny. Did you put up the answer and I missed it?
No, I haven't shared the.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. I looked down for a second. I want to make sure I didn't miss it.
All right, we'll just end it there. We've got one false. That's interesting.
Ooh, I love that. Maybe a former HR person. Maybe a best friend who's in HR. Just kidding. If you've ever worked with me, I actually think that I made it through my in-house career without anybody thinking I was evil. And I'm pretty sure I'm clear. I'm clear as a business owner as well right now, but yeah, who knew this was going to be my career? That's for sure. Okay, so I want to make sure we talk a little bit about the process, right? So we got our plan, right? Now we developed the process. I want to spend a little time here. There's some things you're going to need to think through really before you get going, because these are things sometimes people scramble around trying to figure out after they've already got resumes coming in, et cetera, and it's not very organized. And here's something I didn't put in the slides, but I want you to write it down, that the applicants are interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. Okay, so the applicants are interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So if you want them to show up on time, you better show up on time. If you want them to present a nice, clean, error-free resume, then that's how you should communicate. If you want their emails to, be clear in communication, that's how your emails should be, right? Your emails should be clear, not a lot of typos or no typos, or, if you're holding them accountable to the same standard. They're judging everything about you, right? And same, vice versa. So with the process, you want to decide first, okay, who's going to review resumes? I'm assuming you're going to get resumes. If you're choosing to do another, method, maybe even if you're like throwing it out on social and asking people to like DM you if they're interested, somebody's going to review something at some point, right? Whether it be a DM or a resume or whatever. So who's doing that? Who's in charge of that? It can be multiple people. Sometimes that does get a little confusing. So you want to make sure those people are really clear on how they're communicating and what's happening. But who's doing it? Then who's going to be involved in the interview process? And that I want you to know who's everyone. Now, again, I realize some of you are smaller, so it's not like you have 25 people, but some people say, hey, I have myself, the owner, and I have an employee, and I want both myself and the employee to be part of the interview process. Okay, that's fine. Or maybe they've hired someone like myself, a consultant. I want our consultant to be part of the interview process. Maybe you have some other trusted advisor if you're looking for maybe like an accounting type role. Maybe your CPA is going to help. So there may be other people that you have involved in the interview process. Maybe you're going to have Julie and Corey be part of it, right? So you want to think about who all is going to be involved and making sure you're really clear on who, and then what order that's going to go in. And the consistency of this process is so key. Once you start mixing things up and, okay, Anne was going to interview, but she didn't interview, and this person wasn't available, and you're going to it's an unknown quantity of how the interview is going to work out. That's where the time comes in, right? The commitment to this interview process has got to be almost above anything else you're doing in your business, because it is so important to bring in those people that you're trusting with your vision and mission. So if there's anybody that you've asked to be a part of the process who isn't giving it that same type of attention, then maybe you want to think about not having them be part of it. It's very important. And then who's going to be responsible for the final selection and the offer? So who's making the actual decision? Again, it might be a committee, but who is it? And who's actually going to make that offer of employment to the person? Any of this process being unclear is where things start to fall apart for the applicant, and they may be considering other opportunities. And when you start getting disorganized, that's when applicants start getting concerned. And then they start questioning whether they want to work for you or not. And I'm going to tell you something, here's an un-HR moment. But if you're extremely disorganized in your interview process, and you actually have someone who sticks with you throughout that interview process, I start to worry about them. Because what is it about sort of a dysfunctional process that's appealing to them or attracting them? Now, I will tell you, in my own career, I was a director of HR for a family-owned security company. And the process was anything but HR-ish, right? I mean, they asked me personal questions. It was not the most organized. It was definitely professional in some respects, but it was not the most organized. But I knew I took that job on purpose because I saw the opportunity for me to grow. And I really actually liked the CEO a lot. I didn't work there for very long. I worked there a couple years, but it did exactly what I knew it would do for my career. It gave me the exposure I needed at that time in my career to so many opportunities. And that CEO ended up making me sort of his right hand. And so it paid off. But I will tell you that process was kind of crazy, and I knew what I was walking into. So, but if anybody is taking a job like it's been dysfunctional, the process, and then they take it, I want to know what's going on there too, because that to me says they're probably a low performer and they're probably going to not do a great job for you, because most people are not going to tolerate a super disorganized process. So you're not going to do that. You're going to present an organized front. And then one of the number one complaints we hear in my business all the time, it is about the communication with the applicants. You have to keep them in the loop. If you tell them you're going to call them on Wednesday, you have to call them on Wednesday. You might have made a decision. So Wednesday might come and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought we would have a decision made and we don't. Well, you've got to reach out to them and say, you know what, I apologize, or, I apologize. We didn't quite get to our decision-making as we had thought. So it looks like it'll be Friday, or it looks like it'll be next week. Give yourself some room though. Don't feel like I have to go 24 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours. Give yourself a little break. If you feel like, you know what, we should be able to have an answer within a week. I mean, that's not completely unreasonable. What I've said to people, if I'm interviewing someone I really like, I'll say, listen, you know what? We don't anticipate that we're going to make a decision for about another week because we've got some other people we're interviewing. However, we understand that you're looking for a job, because clearly they wouldn't be in front of you, right? If they weren't, but we understand you're looking for a job. So if that timeline ends up not working with your timeline, would you just give us a little heads up? And that's all I say. And I've had more people follow up on that and say, you know what, Anne, I'm trying to wait and I just got this other opportunity. You're definitely my number one, but I can't be without a job. So I just wanted to check in and see where you are in the process. I don't want anybody threatening you. I don't want anybody holding that over your head to rush along. I just want them to give me the courtesy of a check-in. And then, hey, maybe we can get our act together and figure it out. Or maybe we're going to say, you know what, we're not going to interview anybody else. This is our person and we're just going to go for it. So just ask them for that. But you need to communicate with them. There are so many, if you go to LinkedIn, there are so many complaints from applicants that they make about employers who invite them in for 1, 2, 3 interviews, never call them back. Never tell them anything. Like, you didn't get the job, you didn't get the job. They notify them that they will contact them, never contact them. They submit a resume, they never even know if you got it. And then, so you need to put an auto response on your resume, whatever system you're using, so that they get a response that you at least got it. And then make sure at the very end of the process, anybody that got what I call either a face-to-face interview or a phone interview, whichever one you're doing, anybody that you actually talk to, they have to get a no thank you from you. They have to. You will build so much goodwill in the long term with that person. And you know what? I have to tell you, we have seen, in particular in 2020, more people that made an offer to someone, the person accepted, and then backed out last minute, right before day one, or one person even started and worked for a couple days and then said, you know what, I've changed my mind. And we're pretty sure they got a job offer from somewhere else. So you want to send that, because guess what? When that happened, we were able to go back to their number 2 choice, which really they were almost equivalent. It was like this person had a little more of their industry experience, so that's who they went with, but they really liked this person. So we were able to go back. And we were able to go back and not be embarrassed and be like, oh yeah, sorry, we sort of left you hanging there for like 3 weeks. No, we were able to go back and go, when we, told you that we filled the position, we did fill the position. Sometimes these things don't work out, as you were really right there. You were almost selected, and we're wondering if you're still interested. So you want to make sure you keep those relationships going, because they could be very important to you down the road. Okay, so I want you to write down some don'ts right now. So you have paper or your computer or whatever, put these down, write down some don'ts. Do not interview anyone that doesn't meet your plan. Okay, so remember the plan we talked about. Don't interview anyone that doesn't meet your plan. Don't waste their time, don't waste your time. This isn't let me see if maybe it'll work. No, you don't have time for that. You're busy. Do not hire anyone who doesn't meet your plan. Okay, so do not hire anyone that doesn't meet your plan. So you may have the impression that they meet your plan, you interview them, and you're like, oh, nope, we're not hiring that person. We're moving on. And then do not settle. And I mean, I cannot say that enough. Do not settle, ever. You will pay for settling continuously in your business. It will be one of the most costly things you do. Whether it costs literal money, time, which is money, right? Morale, which is such a critical thing. Do not settle ever. You got to hire the absolute best, 100%. You know what? I want to kind of give you just a quick bonus before I go into the interview questions. One of the things that happens in small businesses really regularly is when you are ready to hire, often people are hesitant to like, oh, I don't know if I should put an ad out there. It's a really unknown quantity. I'm going to reach out to friends and family and ask them. And then, ultimately someone always has a relative or friend who's not working. And I want you to just still put them through the process though. Don't just trust that because they're someone's cousin's aunt, significant other, that they're the right match for you. Thank that person. Thank you so much for referring someone to me. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. I will reach out to them and we'll put them through the process and follow the process, because you will make more bad hires hiring out of your thinking that because it's someone's friend or relative that they're going to be really good for you, and they won't be. So make sure to put them through the same process. That's your bonus tip. Okay, let's talk about interview questions. I have got 4 that I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm going to describe them to you, so you kind of know what they're about. And you know what? I think I moved my water out of the room, but I will.
Well, it sounds like it's a good time to have another poll question.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, thank you. Perfect.
Yes. So while Ann is taking a sip of water, HR is about making rules that everyone is supposed to follow. True or false?
I wish it said HR is about making dumb rules, because then it would be 100% true, right, Ann?
HR does make some dumb rules.
And I would love if you could somehow fit that into the conversation about how rules are made because of dumb decisions.
Oh, okay. Let me write that down. I'm going to write that down in the written policy. Dumb.
I got another false.
Oh, I love it. Dumb rules. Okay. I put it down. We will talk about that.
All right.
Okay. So let's talk about these interview questions. Oh, yeah. Oh, we got several falses. Yay. They're not all about rules. It used to be. I mean, that is actually how I started my HR career, because that's really what the person did. Their role that they had was a lot about just pushing paper and kind of enforcing the rules. And they were changing that perception of human resources. And so that's how I got my first job, because they wanted to hire somebody who didn't have any HR experience on purpose, so that they could teach them that part. They just wanted somebody who would be able to facilitate workshops, so someone who was outgoing, and then had some experience or education in sort of management, that kind of thing. And then they taught them everything else. So that's exactly how I got that job. Okay, so let's go through these question types really quick. And I just want to give you some different questions you can ask in the interview process to help you get out information. So you're paying attention to everything in the interview. I think I actually have a slide on this. Yes, I do actually, because they tell you so much. So direct questions are those questions that are just sort of a short yes or no answer. You might ask them about a specific schedule, like the schedule's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Can you work that schedule, right? Something super simple. It doesn't really give you a ton of information, but it might give you some what I call check boxes, right? You might have some things you need to ask. If you do have a certain skill that they have to have, like working with a certain software or something like that, that might be under direct question, right? Sometimes you can get direct questions out of the way via email before you even go through the interview process. And we do that in my business just to save everyone's time. It's not lengthy. It's maybe 2 to 3 questions, just trying to make sure that they did read the job posting and that they have the right experience that we absolutely need for this job. The next one on there is problem solving. And problem solving is where you're going to actually come up with problems that occur in your business. So scenarios, actual scenarios, and you're going to have the applicant work their way through the scenario with you. Now, how I set up those scenarios is, we know you don't work for a company and you do not know our policies or procedures, but I'm going to describe some problems or scenarios that might come up for a person in this position. And we just want to know, based on your experience and anything you know about the company, what would you do? How would you solve them? It does give insight on someone's experience. It also gives insight on how they reason through problems, right? And they might even ask you some questions, which I often like that, like trying to inquire, get the scenario set up correctly, right? So they're inquisitive, and I like that. So like, let's use a very basic example of a position we probably all know, which is like a front desk or receptionist person. So we might say, you're at the front desk, we've got a 10-line phone system. You've got, 4 lines are on hold. Someone walks up, they're there for a meeting with somebody. How do you handle that situation? Then the 5th line starts ringing, right? Something like that. So you could set it up in whatever way you want, and so that they can walk through it. You can make them a little exaggerated. I wouldn't go crazy though with that. I think that everything about an interview should be realistic. There are a lot of, you can read all the time online about all these ridiculous questions people ask. Like, if you were, a Disney character, which character would you be? If you're a bird, what kind of bird would you be? Those really, they might be fun. It might make everybody laugh after the interview, but they're really not telling you anything. Whether someone is a crow or a peacock really doesn't give you a ton of information. Honestly, I don't know birds at all. So if someone asked me that question, the only bird I can ever think of is like this little brown bird that's on my front lawn pretty much every single day. So that's what I would say, a little brown bird, right? Does that tell you anything about the kind of employee I am? No, it tells you I know nothing about birds. So that's the information you get, right? So stay away from those. I know they're always out there on the internet. Everyone's always sending them to me. Oh, Anne, look at these questions. Can I ask these questions? I'm like, what are those questions? What information are they really giving you? I'm also, although I like Disneyland, I'm very bad at the characters. So I would pick some obscure character that also wouldn't tell you anything about me. Okay, so that's problem solving. Then let's talk about behavioral. Now, I'm going to say to you that behavioral is one of the best types of questions you can ask, the best, because these are questions that you are asking them to tell you based on their past experience, how they would handle it. Okay, so this gives you the most information in an interview. So we want them to describe previous situations and how they handled it. So examples might be, and again, I'm going to use some examples just that we all easily know. So we don't have to try to get too detailed in anyone's specific business. But later, if you have a question, by all means, let me know. So let's say that there is a customer who's really frustrated. How would you handle the situation of a customer being upset? You know, tell me in the past how you've done that. What was the situation? What was the outcome, right? So I'm going to give you the example of how the answer should not sound. Okay, so this is no. So you're going to say, tell me about a situation in the past where you've heard or you had an upset customer. What was the situation? What was the outcome? This is the wrong answer. Oh, you know, what I would do is I would apologize to the customer. I would see if I could answer any questions that they would have. I'd be really calm and thank them for coming to me. And then if I couldn't solve it, I would find my supervisor and I would ask my supervisor if they could step in. Okay. The reason that's the wrong answer is that is not a behavioral response. That is what they would do, they could do, they should do. That's easy. That's where when people say, oh, you never know who you're going to hire, right? That's why, because they accept those kind of answers. And you are correct. People practice for those kind of answers. Here's the behavioral answer. So in my company, the time I can think about is I had this upset customer. They'd come in and they'd been billed twice. So they were really upset because it was kind of expensive. So their credit card had been charged twice. They had tried to call in to see if someone could help them. And apparently they got the runaround on the phone. They were really mad. So I had to go look at their bill and I had to figure out what they were charged twice for. Then I had to call our billing department, work that out. And then I had to explain to the customer how we were going to do the credit. And, you know, we don't do credits right away there. So they were going to have to wait 10 days to get the credit. So they were totally not happy about that. It got worse. So at that point, I decided I better call my supervisor. So my supervisor came over and then my supervisor said, see how that's completely different? That's a completely different response. You should feel, I always say like with popcorn, you should be like, oh, listen to the story. Like, oh, that's very interesting. You know, they should give you an example, an exact example. If they don't give you an example, it's going to give you some information. If they're like, oh gosh, I just can't think of an example, or they don't give you an example, they don't have the experience, or they're not being truthful. Okay, those are a couple of things. And sometimes they're going to go to that what I would, could, should do on natural instinct. And what I want you to say is, great, you know, thank you for that response. Now, can you give me a specific example that would demonstrate what you just told me you would do? And bring them back to the behavioral example. Because that will give you the most information time and time again. I guarantee it. It is, and I use it with all levels, entry level to most senior level. Now the questions sometimes get a little more complicated or more convoluted, but they are the same types of questions. So if I'm going to spend the most amount of time in my interview, where I'm going to spend it with the questions is going to be on behavioral. The last type of question is reflective. These are questions you cannot prepare for. So direct problem solving and behavioral, I can have those all prepared in advance, and you should. Those should already be written down based on the position you're looking for, your plan, right? You got your plan. You're like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. Here's the questions I need to ask. Reflective questions are follow-up questions that you didn't plan for. So maybe someone says, and I listen for buzzwords personally because they make me crazy. Oh, I'm a team player. Oh, very interesting. So give me an example that would demonstrate that you're a team player. Okay. I love to empower people. Oh, fantastic. Give me an example that would demonstrate a time that you empowered someone, right? So when I draw it back to a behavioral question, I take it out of something that sounds great and I'm going like this, like, oh, this sounds really good. And I'm making them now prove it, right? And if someone who can't prove it, I know that now they're just saying words they heard somebody tell them, probably a bad HR professional. They're not actually telling me things that they've actually done or that they know they can do. So it's very important that you use reflective as well. And really, you might pick out other things that you want to reflect on, but I listen a lot for buzzwords because they just personally make me crazy because I think they get overused and nobody even knows what they mean. I'm going to give you an example of this really quick that actually happened. So in the human resources world, a very common thing that gets said is, I want a seat at the table. Okay. So what it means is HR commonly has not been respected in the history of HR, and forever they have been fighting to sort of get into the room where the executives are, right? And that's a seat at the table with the executives, and that they're a part of that leadership team, whatever that looks like. So we were interviewing for director of HR, a client of mine and he said, what are you looking for in your next career, your next job? And she goes, you know what? I really want a seat at the table. And he goes, what does that mean to you? And she goes, no lie. She did not know. So she said what gets repeated over and over and over again. And I could have easily, as an HR person, I've heard that so many times, I know what it means. So I easily could have just said, oh yeah, okay, I get it. She wants a seat at the table. But my client had never heard that before. So he was like, I've never heard this before. What does this mean? I mean, he was legitimately didn't even know what that meant. And she couldn't explain it. So that was very telling information in that interview. Like, she didn't even know what she was saying. She didn't even know she wants a seat at the table, but she doesn't even know what that means. How are you going to get a seat at the table if you don't even know what the heck you're trying to get, what you're doing, right? So very important to listen to your applicants. Okay, so
you want to do another poll
question in?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, I'm ready.
Last poll question.
Woohoo!
HR people are typically the biggest gossipers in the company.
Fact.
Oh God. Fact.
Beats Battlestar Galactica. Fact.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm the only person in the group who's had a negative HR experience.
Well, hey, that could be. That could be.
Yeah, I always fly under the radar, so.
Oh, Nicole wasn't seeing the polls earlier. Did we take care of that?
I haven't heard from her since.
Oh, okay, good. So hopefully she's got it.
Yeah. All right, let's just go ahead and end that.
Oh, well, we got 3-1. So yeah, I will say that when you get to the size where you need to hire an HR professional, and depending, it varies, but I would say most people, like, you don't need a full-time HR professional till you usually have, it varies between 50 and 100 people. And I realize that's a very large gap, but it depends on if you have like sort of high need employees that are paid on an hourly basis, that have lots of needs, right? So one of my clients, they're just at 50 and they need a full-time HR professional because their employees, they're not really tech savvy. They need a lot of hand-holding. So there was nobody that they really needed somebody to do that. But a lot of times what you do is you start to, it's often, someone who's in accounting or it's an office manager, somebody like that starts to take small percentages of their job and start to handle HR. But if you hire someone who is the gossiper, or you find that they're a gossiper, you've got to get them out of that role. Part of that, I will tell you, is just setting them up for what it's going to be like to be in the role before they take it on. It's a high degree of confidentiality. You're going to have access to information that you cannot tell anybody. I know I shared this with Julie and Corey, but in early, it was probably about halfway through my career. I knew we were doing a large layoff, and our customer service manager came into me and said, hey, I was wondering if you can give me my exact salary. And I said, oh yeah, sure, absolutely. And I'm getting the information. And she goes, I'm going to make an offer on a house tonight. And I just want to make sure I have everything correct. And I was like, just because I knew she was getting laid off in a couple of days. And I couldn't sit there and be like, oh my gosh, do you know what, you're getting laid off? I couldn't show it on my face. I just went like, oh my gosh, congratulations, that's amazing. She left my office. I ran down to the CEO's office and I was like, Gary, we gotta let her in. Like, we gotta tell her we cannot let her buy a house. Like, this is not okay. And he was an amazing boss. So we worked it out. But had he said to me, you know what, Ann, that's not approved, or we can't do that, or that's just what it would have been. And I took this role voluntarily, and I understand that there's a lot of times tough business decisions that have to be made. So you don't want your HR person to be the gossip. Okay, so with successful hiring, you're going to be really clear on those job responsibilities and required skills. You're going to have an established interview process, and you're going to apply it consistently. Remember the plan, the process over and over and over again. You're going to pay attention to all applicant communication during the interview process. And this is from the resume you look at, or cover letter, or email, or DM, or whatever you're getting, all the way through the very end. And when you see things, I call them like red flags. When you see things that are red flags, you're going to have to decide if you're paying attention to them or not. I would at least be noting them. And if you might get a whole list of red flags and you're like, man, you know what? This person isn't my person. They're very likable, but I saw all these issues. Or maybe they're great like on technical side, but wow, they are not going to be likable in my team at all. And that's going to be a real problem here because we're small and we need people who are likable. So pay attention, don't ignore it. If they cancel an interview last minute, that's a huge sign. If they suddenly have their car breakdown, on if you do in-person interviews, if they can't get their Zoom or whatever method working before the interview. I mean, those are all signs to you that you have somebody who's maybe not as organized. Now, one issue, okay, but multiple times we just keep running into problems. One of the red flags for me, I'll just let you know, is a lot of people are sending out resumes right now that are not current. So one of the first questions I ask is this your current resume? Because I've had more people say, oh, no, it's not. And then I'll say, okay, can you update it? And you find out it says I'm still currently working at XYZ company. And actually I've been gone since January. A lot of people right now are just assuming because of the pandemic that, oh, they probably got laid off or their business is letting people go. But when you ask questions, you find out that it was well before this even ever started. So that's not a good sign to me because that's someone who's not being really honest and upfront. And in our company, we really value integrity. It's one of our core values. So that's a big deal to us. Never settle. I told you guys that. I mean it. Never, ever, ever settle. You only want the best people. This is your baby, right? And you want the best people there. Okay, so we talked a little bit about interviewing, and I couldn't resist talking about kind of where the real work begins after they accept the offer. Because if I can get my clients to spend the time on the interview that they need to, which most of our clients now are very good at that, sometimes they get so excited that the offer is accepted that they forget about the rest of what can happen, okay? And what needs to happen. So after the offer at day one, what should be happening during that time? Well, on the day they accept the offer, if it's not the hiring, I guess it's a hiring supervisor, the person they're going to report to. If it's not their direct report supervisor who contacts them to make the offer, then that person needs to call and do a welcome to the team. We're so excited, looking forward to it. From that day to the first day of employment, whatever that notice period is, your applicants should be touched at once, if not twice per week. And I'm going to explain those touches. It can be an email. Hey, the team's really excited to get together. It can be, hey, you know what? We're going to do a quick 4 o'clock Zoom coffee with the team. And again, I'm saying team, and I understand it might just be you. We're going to do a 4 o'clock get together, just you and I. I'd love to just check in and see how things are going. Don't make it awkward, uncomfortable. Don't make it hours long. Make it a 30-minute check-in. Hey, I'm going to send you a Starbucks gift card or whatever coffee shop you like or they like. You could even ask them that. Like, hey, what's your favorite coffee place? I want to send you a gift card so you can grab your favorite coffee before we do this Zoom call. You can ask them things like, hey, what kind of office supplies do you like? Because regardless of where they're working, they're going to need some supplies. You can just talk about all kinds of things. So you want to touch in if their notice period, however long it is, sometimes I see 2 weeks, sometimes I see a week, sometimes I see 4 weeks. Never assume the deal is done, because what happens sometimes in that notice period is they've been maybe interviewing or putting resumes out and they start to get phone calls. And then they're thinking like, oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I might as well, let me just see what else is out there, right? And then they might get a better offer and then they'll cancel coming to work for you. So stay in contact with them. If you have any swag that you can send them, a coffee mug, a t-shirt, a pen, send them that with a note card, and saying, hey, can't wait for you to join our team. Here's a coffee mug, enjoy, right? Get them connected to your company as soon as possible and keep them connected. Okay, so on day one, absolutely the first thing that should happen is they get connected with whoever they're going to report to should be the very first person they see. So if you're working remotely, you're going to schedule a Zoom connection, see you at 8 a.m. and that's the first person they're going to see. Okay, is their hiring supervisor. There was something else I was just going to say about that. Anyway, so that's so important on that first day that they see that person first. They shouldn't see HR, if you have HR. They shouldn't see IT or your IT consultant. They shouldn't see anybody else. The very first person, hey, I'm so glad you're here today. We've been so excited for you to start. I want to go over a little bit about what your first day is going to look like. And then let's see if you have any initial questions, and then we'll get off and running. And you should have a clear agenda for what that day is going to look like. Okay, so it shouldn't be, oh, I think you're going here. Again, the disorganization, that will ring loud and clear to a new hire. You want to be organized and prompt, on time, know exactly what you're going to do. One little tip I'll just recommend about day one, and you might want to write this one down, is if you start your day at 8, maybe don't have them start their day at 8. Maybe you start their day at 9. Give yourself an hour to get in. Another tip is maybe they don't start on Monday. Maybe they start on Tuesday. Mondays are a rough day for people, right? Depending on how your weekend was and what happened with your business over the weekend. So maybe have them start on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. You know, it doesn't have to be Monday at 8, right? It can be later in the day. It doesn't have to be right away. I want you to be at your best. We need you to be excited and at your best. So then the first week, and again, I'm just kind of going high level. We could do a whole workshop just on onboarding, but the first week, you're going to be clear on when they're getting trained, who they're connecting with, all of that stuff, right? And for the first week, they should begin their day and end their day with whoever they're reporting to. Every day, just a quick 10, 15 minute morning. It's like, welcome back. So glad you're here. Did you have any questions about yesterday? You know, after you went home last night, or if they're working virtually after, you know, we didn't see any of us anymore. Did you have any questions that came up about anything that you saw, learned, anything? No? Great. Okay, let me go over what your day is going to look like. Then at the end of the day, last 10 or 15 minutes of the day, hey, I just wanted to wrap up with you. How'd your day go? You know, what are your thoughts so far? Do you have any initial questions or anything? You know, and just kind of talk to them and start finding out how they're settling in, because you want to know now, because if they're running into problems already, you want to know so that you can help smooth the water, if you will, so that they can be successful in your company. And then after that first week, we're going to, you know, definitely make sure you do a 30, 60, 90-day check-in where you have a set time that you're already checking in with them. Those are maybe a little longer, maybe 30 minutes. And you should have some set questions, open-ended questions that you're going to ask them specifically. You know, what have you enjoyed the most about working here so far? What's one thing that I could support you on? You know, what's one thing you feel like you might need to learn a little more about? Those are just some examples of questions you could come up with. And then hopefully they have some input for you as well, some feedback. So definitely don't miss those check-ins though. They're very important. Some of my clients go longer than 90 days, but again, knowing that, you know, we're talking smaller companies right now, I want you to do something that's manageable. Does this take time? 100%. Is it worth it? 100%. It will pay back to you times 1,000. I'm telling you, investing this time, both in the selection and bringing them into your company, will pay back over and over and over again. You will never regret it. Even if they don't work out, you will not regret it, because you will find out sooner than you would probably in a normal situation where you didn't do this, that they're not going to work out and you may have to say goodbye. And some people are like, oh, see, it didn't work. No, it did work. It worked. It's better than you getting to a year, 2 years, 5 years and calling me and saying, oh my gosh, I have this employee that's been underperforming for 5 years. Like, those are the worst calls that I get. Okay. So that is the end of sort of the hiring piece. Julie, Corey, do we want to, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Let me, is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here. Do you want me to read them off to you?
Sure.
Okay. So all three of them are from Sean.
Yay, Sean.
And his first question is, my belief is that money is very important, and setting up a structure for the new hire to understand that they will receive annual raises at a minimum of 5% per year if the person is motivated and strives to improve results. Do you agree with this approach?
Okay, so Sean, here's the deal. In the surveys that have been done for years, right, over and over and over again, money is one of the most important factors. I think they usually have, the surveys I've seen are usually like 5 to 10, right? 5 to 10 top things. One of the most, it's never the most. So when they have managers rank, hey, what do you think the most important thing is to an employee? Managers always say money. They always say, oh, the most important thing to an employee is money. When they say, hey, employees, what's the most important thing to you? You know what always ends up on number one? Feeling valued, feeling like they're doing important work, things like that. That's actually what's the most important. Money is in there. And at the end of the day, if someone can't pay their bills, it doesn't matter how great your environment is. If they can't pay their bills, they're not going to be happy. But if you incorporate money as part of that's fine. I mean, absolutely. Tell them what it looks like. Explain what the money structure is, but don't rely on money to make you have good employees. It doesn't work for long-term. It doesn't work for long-term success for them because they can get money anywhere. They really can. They can go anywhere to get money, but I can't go anywhere and just work with Sean. I can only be here and work with Sean. So I want to know why I'm going to stay for you. And you've probably seen those surveys too, where they say employees stay for their leader. I know I've done that. I've actually stayed in jobs longer than I wanted to because I loved my supervisor so much. And I wanted to do anything to make that. I wanted the team to be successful. I wanted them to be successful. So that's my answer to that one.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Next question is 30, 60, 90-day check-ins are cool. What is your opinion about weekly one-on-ones as recommended in the book Traction by Gina Wickman? Such a great book.
I've not read that book, but it's really funny because one of the things I actually do talk about in my own business is weekly one-on-ones with the team, each team member individually. I call them engagement meetings in my practice. They're 15 minutes, no more than 15 minutes, and they're all about the employee. They're not about what you did or didn't do. It's not a review. It's about checking in. Actually, I shouldn't say they're weekly. What I actually recommend you do them every 2 weeks. But so you're checking in on their level of engagement. So you're never surprised. You know exactly how well your employees are doing, how much they like working for you, and if there's any issues that you can help smooth out right away.
Okay.
So I'm down. I love it.
Perfect. And then the final one is the final one we have so far. What is the best way to fire someone? Disclosure: I fired 33 people at one job.
So I don't know if I can answer that in the time we have, because that's a whole other process. But I'll tell you what my belief on termination. If you have to terminate someone's employment, I'm not talking about a layoff. If you have to terminate someone's employment, it shouldn't be a surprise to them because you've done such a good job communicating where they were not meeting expectations and giving them every opportunity to improve and get trained. Or it's a policy that's very clear, like no embezzling. And so that it's not a surprise to them. They may not love it. They may not be excited about it, but they're not surprised. So that's the best way. That's the fastest answer I can give.
That's a good answer. We do have one more question that came in.
Okay.
This one's from Cheryl. Is there a best day/time for those weekly check-ins?
Hi, Cheryl. So I kind of have two answers on that. I'm always torn on this. I want it to be the best. I mean, I really want the employee to be at their best, but I also really need you to be at your best. So I would prefer that you try to pick a time that's best for the employee. When you feel they're, if they're a morning person, great, or they're an afternoon person, so they can feel, ideal and optimal. But if their time doesn't have to happen to be the best time that you are, if you're not a morning person and they're a morning person, you're going to just really have to make sure that you step up for their moment, right? You're going to really have to show up for their moment and go, you know what? I'm going to suck it up today. I'm going to make sure I get an extra cup of coffee or whatever I need to do because this 15 minutes is important. It's important for my team member and I'm going to do it. And it's, like I said, I recommend them no less than every 2 weeks, right? I don't want them to go longer than that. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, we've got two more. Now they're
Okay.
rolling in, Ann. You might be the winner for the most questions, which is fantastic.
Woohoo! I was
So another-
trying. Thanks,
I
you
know.
guys. You can all get prizes now.
So another one from Cheryl is, how many opportunities do you give before you terminate unless it's flagrant?
Again, I think, okay, so there's a lot of variations. I think that it's how long have they been with you? Is this new behavior? How long have they been with you? Is this new behavior? How good have you been at a leader at training them? So I just had a conversation in one of my coaching calls yesterday where a leader's thinking about terminating someone's employment. And I said, let's be really honest here. Oh, actually, let me back up and tell you this. I said, have you ever asked her what she needs to be more successful? And she said, yeah, she said she needs more training. And I said, so what training have you given her or gotten for her? 0. I'm like, okay, so that's your fault. Like, you need to say, she told you what she needed. She said she thinks she would be able to do the job and meet your expectations. So I think that it does vary, but I'm going to tell you, hire slow, fire fast. If it really is not working out in the beginning, be done. Just be done. I often say that your low performer can be someone else's high performer. So you don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, they're never going to work again. It's the end of their career. No, they'll find another job, and maybe they'll find one that's a better match for them. So that's my advice on that.
Perfect. And the final question, unless one more comes in, is from Carol. What happens if you have, this is a great question. What happens if you have no good candidates after the interview process? Do you go with the best of the worst or keep looking?
Ooh, good question, Carol. So that goes back to, you only hire the best. If you don't have any good candidates, you make sure, right? Is my plan good? Has my process been good? Is it me? Because I hate to tell you, but a lot of leaders I work with, we got to look back at them. I mean, I understand it's tough, especially if you're the business owner, right? Because you get busy. Again, you've got a million things on your plate. I'm a business owner, like, I understand, right? So, but if you've really done a good job, then you have to go back out and look for new people. I would not hire the best of the worst or whatever. I would only hire the best, period. So that might mean you have to start over again. And you want to critically assess what went wrong before you start that process again. Was it something that you did, or, that you could have done differently? Or is it just truly, for, gosh, a while now, we've had a really tough time finding really strong candidates. Right now, we're in a very interesting situation where I think it's going to continue this way, unfortunately, but there's going to be a lot more people looking right now. But every employer is hanging on to their very best people as long as they possibly can. So unless the entire business is going out of business, they're not going to lay off their best people. So some of the people you may meet if you're hiring right now, or you start hiring soon, might be someone else's low performer. Now that could mean they're going to be your high performer, because I do believe that, but you just want to make sure you're, like, really doing a good interview process and not just assuming that, oh gosh, they work for that company and they got laid off, they must be really good. No, that's not actually true. I mean, people will hold on to their high performers as long as they possibly can until they really financially can't do it anymore. So yeah, so good question.
Great. All right, we're good to go now.
Woohoo! All right, thank you for that. So I just want to talk a little bit about establishing written policies, kind of part of the HR world, and we'll get to that dumb rules question here. So the purpose of establishing written policies is to have clear communication to all employees, and it reinforces consistency and application of those policies, right? So we make sure we're applying them as consistently as possible. It also, of course, allows employees to be informed without having to repeatedly inquire. And I'm going to talk about how you decide what to document. But one of the things that I am against, and this goes to our dumb rules, how they're made. How dumb rules are made is we allow one person to dictate a policy. So here's a common one that comes up for me. So I help people write employee handbooks, right? And they say, oh, we need a policy. This is a really common one, I can't tell you. We need a policy about bereavement leave. And then they lay out some really strict thing about bereavement leave. Like one of my clients said, they can only take bereavement leave one time in a 12-month period. Or they can't take bereavement leave for anyone outside of these family members or whatever. And so when I say, explain to me what's that about, right? Well, and this it happens every time. Well, Their one time was an employee, right? And then they go to tell me this story. And most of the time, that person doesn't even work there anymore. But they tell me a story about one employee. So they create a policy or they want to create or they have created a policy around one or two people. That is not how you create policies. You create policies that are good for your company and for your business. When you have one or two employees or however, whatever the number is, that are not meeting your performance expectations or pushing boundaries on things like that, you have a conversation with them and you talk to them about what your expectations are. You know, this is the 5th death you've had this year, and I want to be empathetic to it, but I'm having a hard time being able to keep my business going because that you keep leaving. So this is the last one I'm approving this year. Well, the policy doesn't say that. Well, that's okay. I'm the business owner and I'm implementing this today. And that's fine. You don't have to rewrite the policy. You just tell them. And the thing is about it, everything does not have to be written down unless, of course, you're in a union environment, but assuming we're not there, everything doesn't need to be written down. Now, do I want things written down for clarity? Of course I do, but you're allowed to step in as a leader and call out something that isn't working for your company, and it's making it difficult to manage that employee because they're out for bereavement leave 5 times in 1 year, you know? So that's perfectly okay. I'd rather you do that than create a policy around it. The other very common policy we get created around a person is dress code. One time we had an employee who wore fill in the blanks. And I'm like, did you tell that employee not to ever wear that again? Well, no, I mean, it was uncomfortable and no one wanted to talk to them. We didn't want them to get mad. And we're like dancing around. So we're dancing around, but we're going to write a policy that probably doesn't even need to be written. And it's annoying. So don't write policies for one person. Have the important, critical, or crucial conversation that you need to have with them and tell them what your expectations are and move on from there. If they push back on that, I can almost guarantee you they're your low performer and you're probably going to need to say goodbye to them soon anyway. No high-performing employee is going to have a difficulty with something that seems reasonable. Even if they don't like it, they might say, gosh, that seems really, I'll give you an example of a high-performing employee. So one of my clients had this employee who used to dress up for work all the time. And then as his job got more detailed, he was actually doing some physical labor in his job, like moving tables and setting up chairs and things like that to help his team out. And so he stopped wearing like a dress shirt and tie and that kind of thing because he didn't want it to get dirty or ruined. And the leader was like, you need to dress up again. So, I kind of had to have that. I was their HR person at the time and I had to have that conversation with him. And I'll tell you, he goes, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I want to be there for my team. And the best way I can help be for my team is help them in moving things around, but that's fine. I'll go back to wearing a dress shirt and tie. And I'll just bring I think they had polos or something, but I'll just bring one of those on the days that I have to move stuff. I'll throw that on, help move, and then I'll change back again. So did he love it? No, he didn't love it. Would he have rather just been able to make that decision on what appropriate dress was? Absolutely. But he's a high-performing employee. So he understood that was just the rules. It's like, okay, I'll do it. So that's a very clear indicator when you have a high-performing employee. They're going to tell you why they don't maybe care for what you came up with, but they're going to also abide by it if it's not unreasonable. So how do you determine what policies to document? So the size of the document should be representative of the size of the company. You can engage consultants like myself, legal counsel, you can buy templates, and you will have a 100-page document and you have 2 employees, right? I don't know who's able to keep track of 100 pages. I couldn't keep track. I can't even I've had 600 employee companies and we didn't have a document that long. So I really want you to think about what are the laws that I'm legally required to document in a policy. We have some here. I know many states have some, like you have to write these down. Then what are the benefits or perks that I want to write down, right? Because that's stuff that people get excited about. Maybe how vacation is accrued or paid out, if you have paid sick leave, if you take any paid holidays, like I talked about earlier, maybe you have some sort of parking, fee reimbursement, maybe you offer a cell phone reimbursement. So you might want to write those things down just because it's nice to have it in writing and you get to hand it to your employee and maybe we're talking 1 page, 5 pages, I don't know. And just hey, here's some cool stuff that we do here. And you don't have to put every single thing down. You can say like a full disclaimer at the bottom or at the top that, you know, this is just an overview and additional information can be obtained by, and tell them how to do that, who to talk to or whatever, and just give them an overview. So you might have to write down some stuff because you're required to by law. I'll give you an example, like for in California, like employers have to have a written harassment prevention policy. It's just the law. So they have to have it. Doesn't matter. You have an employee, you got to have a harassment prevention policy. So if you have something like that, put that down and then think about things you want to communicate. Maybe you want to be clear about how to request time off. Maybe you have certain times of the year. One of my clients just called me with this. They're a small business and they need to black out certain times of the year that they can't give people time off because this is like their busy time where a lot of people might be slowing down. This is the time they're ramping up. So they wanted to know if they could black out certain time that employees couldn't take vacation, and they can. So, so we were talking about that. How do they communicate that to the team? And, you know, putting that in writing is helpful so that it's not just verbal and misunderstood. Any questions that you get regularly, those are things you might want to write down, right? And I put sort of that holiday pay, vacation, benefits, anything that you might get a lot of questions around, like, hey, it's, you know, Veterans Day is coming up. Is that a holiday that we get? And employees are always wondering. So you're like, you know, maybe we should clarify what our holidays are, or that we don't give paid holidays, right? So pay attention to things that are getting regularly asked, that are taking time away, or that every time they get asked, everyone has to like remember what the answer is. Just write them down so you can get that out of the way. And then, of course, you can get templates. I mean, you can go online, you can buy templates of policies, but I just want to say that every document you have represents your company. And so really think about that. And a lot of people don't think about their employee handbook in that way because they think, oh, it's just an employee handbook, like who cares? It's just, a lot of people say, well, no one reads it anyway, right? Or no one reads these policies anyway. They should, but really think about it. How does it reflect on your company? Are you a conservative company? It's conservative. Are you a more fun company? So should it be written in a more fun way? Maybe you want to talk about the history of the company a little bit, but templates are fine. But I would just say every single document that comes out of your sort of HR realm, whatever that is for you, should represent your company, except for, of course, any state or federal mandated forms that you have to use their form. Those aren't going to look any different, but anything else you give should represent your company. Okay, so just really quick, I want to just talk a little bit about payroll. We're going to just talk a little bit about benefits, and then you guys are back on whatever questions you have. So common policies. Oh, I forgot. Yes, sorry. I'm talking about common policies to consider. I think I mentioned a lot of these, but harassment, discrimination. You might want to write down your pay practices, like when do people get paid? How often do they get paid? What are the pay periods? Any health benefits you offer? How do they get those benefits? When are they eligible? If you offer vacation or paid time off leave, if you offer sick leave or like expense reimbursement. So I think I gave you all those examples, and you may have others. These are some common ones that you may come across at some point that you want to write down. All right, so let's just talk about payroll consideration just for a second. So I'm not a payroll expert, but being in human resources, I've always had sort of general oversight for payroll. And I want to tell you a few things that you want to consider if you're at that point where you're considering payroll providers, or at the point you end up considering payroll providers. So always, consider more than one payroll provider when you get to it, and evaluate who will be the best for you. Many of them now, especially to small businesses, will sell way more than you need. So really try to include somebody you trust in that, whether it be your business coach or a CPA or an HR consultant. Try to ask somebody for their input, because it's important that you don't buy more than you need. Because those systems are only as good as you have somebody to input all the data. So we find a lot of clients, we look at their systems and we're like, are you doing this? Are you using this? And they're paying for all these things they don't use. And they don't even know how they're going to get to that point where they can use them. There are definitely benefits to electronic timekeeping, especially with hourly employees. I highly recommend it. It just is a great way to start off from the beginning, rather than someone filling in an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. Just where they automatically are sort of clocking in and out, but usually using a telephone or like a web-based program so they can use their computer. Make sure you know if you have any wage statement requirements and retention for those wage statements. So a wage statement is what many people used to call paycheck stubs. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about. They're wage statements. Many states have requirements for what has to be listed on that wage statement and how long you have to keep that wage statement in case an employee ever requests it. So be very clear on that. And you cannot, and this is actually my last bullet there, your payroll providers are helpful, but you can't rely on them for everything. They make mistakes too. Even the very biggest companies make mistakes. So if they tell you something, just verify it with another source. Like, it's always good to just hear it from 2 places and make sure you get it correct, or you can do some of your own research. Definitely establish your requirements up front for in terms of what your payroll, what you need, right, in terms of your payroll. And then put in, like, if you want to include your paid time off accruals, that's a great place to let payroll manage it, the payroll system or software manage it for you. So you're not trying to remember, okay, I think you had 3 days of sick and I think I remember you used 1. It's just very easy to put it in there. So biggest takeaways from payroll is definitely consider more than one provider. I know, smaller business, a lot of times go to QuickBooks or something like that, which is fine. But when you start thinking about adding team members, you may want to think about getting a little bit bigger system. It doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, we're a small company and we use a payroll provider outside of QuickBooks. So just really pay attention to those things though, and like making sure you just get what you need and not beyond. Okay, my last section, and then I am open to whatever questions you all have, is company provided benefits. So when you go down the road of benefits, whether you are there now or you're thinking about going there at some point in the future, it's always good to compare to a similar size company or industry. What are they offering? So when your money, right, so the salary is lower than maybe what industry standard is, a lot of times you can make up for that in benefits. And it doesn't have to be health benefits per se, it can be any kind of benefit. When your benefits are lower, sometimes you can make that up in salary, right? So depending on what your competitor's doing, it's just good to know where they are, right? It doesn't mean you have to match it. It doesn't mean you're not going to be able to hire good employees. It just means be aware, because maybe you're like, gosh, you know what? I can't quite offer those kind of benefits yet, but boy, I would like to be there, in the next 12 months, next 24 months, something like that. So you have a goal, and you can always start finding out information about what it would entail now. So you're planning, right, for maybe what the costs that would be associated, what is it going to take to administer it? That leads me right to make a long-term plan, right? That's what we want to be looking at. Don't only look at where you are today, look at where you want to be. Vacation, sick leave, paid holidays, 401k, public transportation, parking fees. I mean, those were just rattled off the top of my head. Cell phone reimbursements. I know one of my favorite jobs gave me a gas card. I didn't pay for gas for 2 years. That was my favorite thing until I quit. And then I had to start paying gas. And I was like, wow, gas is expensive. It's funny how quickly you forget. So what are some of the benefits? So we're not just talking about health benefits. There can be all kinds of benefits you offer. Maybe you do, like I said, like offer luncheons, or, like I said, a food delivery card or whatever. There's all kinds of things you can do. You feel free to ask your employees what's important to them. So if you're like in that process of trying to navigate and you're like, wow, I don't have money to do everything I'd like to do, but I could do some things, maybe you put out a list like, hey, if you could have, paid vacation, paid sick leave, or paid holidays, which one would you want? Get their input, because you're trying to build something that's going to keep them engaged and interested, right? They're going to be engaged through other ways, but also connected to your company through benefits. So ask them, get their input. I like to use the interview process to gather information. Sometimes when, we're asking people like what their salary requirements are, sometimes we'll inquire as to what sort of benefit package they have as well. Some people are a little more hesitant to share that, but we get a lot of information that way. I don't want you to do it. I don't want you to interview people just to get that information. But during the interview process, it also helps you position your offer, by the way, because somebody may have 4 weeks of vacation, and you're worried about dollar for dollar matching their salary, but then you don't have any paid vacation. So that's going to totally the offer is going to start to fizzle out, because they're not going to have to give up a lot of paid vacation time. And then try to stay at least with the competition. So whoever you consider your competition, and that should be, you know, similar size, right? If you know the revenue, similar people size, similar location, you want to try to stay close to them if you can. If you can't, you can't. You're just gonna, that is what it is, and you're gonna just do your best, but you want to try because that'll really help you down the road. It helps you attract employees. It helps you retain employees, but it's not the only piece, but it will be on the list for the employee. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. And I just put my contact information up there again so you could find me. I'm going to take another sip of water and see if you guys have any other questions.
Yeah. So everybody, you also have access to her information in Slack and in the in Kartra. So let's see if anyone else has questions. She covered a lot of information, so throw them out there, everybody.
Cheryl has stories for you guys in the future.
Yeah, Cheryl always has stories for us. So, and lucky for us, we get to see her this weekend, so we can hear her. We'll get to hear her stories. Some of them.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Does anybody, Sean, you got any more questions for us? Carol's usually pretty good about asking questions.
You guys asked, I mean, you asked a lot. I was very excited.
They really did. I apologize. I was kind of multitasking for a little bit. So I'm curious if, oh wait, we have a question.
There you go.
Oh, it's not a question. It's Sean saying, thanks, Anne.
Oh, thanks, Sean.
Did we talk about the sort of the relationship between leadership and HR?
Oh, let's talk about that, because that was actually kind of a poll question.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's, and again, I mentioned that I taught HR professionals for 7 years, and I absolutely loved it, by the way. But one of the things that I'm always explaining is that, first of all, your HR professional, when you get ready to hire HR, or even someone who has partial responsibility, right, for some of the HR job, they should always report to the top. Now, I understand when we're talking Fortune 500 company, they may not report to the top, but we're talking smaller right now, but they should really report to the top, the CEO. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason is because that person who's handling HR may have information come to them that is about anybody on your team. And you do not want them to be stuck below like the CFO or the COO, and they can't get to the CEO because they're not allowed to, right? Because it's not how the reporting works. And so if someone's complaining about the COO, your HR professional or whoever's handling that gets stuck and they can't get to the CEO. And the CEO always needs to be on top of any kind of potential liability, right? And HR is going to be the one that probably knows that before anybody else. So definitely reporting to you. Now, how does HR and management work? So human resources, what often HR professionals get confused about is they say, I ask this question in interviews when I'm interviewing HR people. I say, is human resources with the employees or are they with leadership? And many HR people say with the employees. And that's actually not true. HR is with leadership. They are part of the management team. They are definitely there to help facilitate discussion, help translate policies, to make sure that the employees feel connected, taken care of, valued, right? But their role is to be part of management. And when HR professionals get that confused, that is where the problems often begin, because they become one of the employees and then they can't differentiate and they can't realize that there's empathy, but maybe they can't be sympathetic or they can't tell the secrets, right? They have to feel comfortable being a part of management. So that's a very important skill for whoever handles your HR. Again, it might not be a full-time HR person, but it might be someone who's starting to take on HR responsibilities. So they are part of the management team, but they help facilitate discussion and sort of that translation of policies and procedures with the employees, and absolutely should be approachable by employees. If you have an HR person who employees don't want to talk to, you got to make a change. You cannot keep that person there because it will kill your business, because that person's the problem.
It's, I think until we talked about that on our podcast, I had never really considered that relationship. And it's important. And that's really good information for everybody. When you think about people who are, solopreneurs, or they're not going to have any, they'll never have employees. They don't currently, or they won't have any employees. What sort of guidance would you give to them in with respect to HR?
Well, I mean, definitely makes it, a lot easier in many ways. And I know some of our clients will jokingly say, gosh, if I were to do this all over again, I would never have any employees. But I mean, I think, yeah, from that respect, it's going to be a lot easier because you don't have that same kind of compliance piece that you have to worry about. And you won't have the time to manage someone else. You'll just really be managing yourself. So I think just being the best leader of yourself you possibly can be in those times is the way to go. Really still setting your own values, living by your values, really deciding how you want to show up in the world to your clients, to your customers, whatever you might call them. I think all of that is so key, even when you're a solopreneur.
Yeah, perfect. We have another question here from Carol. If you see a high rate of turnover in one department, and that department is only 9 people in total, and they've had turnover of 16 people in 3 years, is that a hiring problem or a management problem?
Oh, that is worth exploring more for sure, because it could be both. It could be one or the other. A turnover, it's about paying attention to why those people are getting turned over, right? So if it's that, gosh, this person doesn't have the skills, this person doesn't have the skills, or is it, so are we terminating them? Are they quitting? Is it a combination? So I think that would be a further exploration, in my opinion. I'm going to tell you something that I did with this one department that had really high turnover, and the director just kept saying to the CEO, oh, it's money. We don't pay enough money. It's money. And the CEO believed that for quite a while. And I finally said, you know what? I want to start talking to these people that are quitting. And he goes, okay, go ahead. So I talked to, the first one, and I said, okay, so I'm curious to know, I want to know a little bit. I know you're leaving and you're going to another job. Congratulations. Tell me a little bit about what made your decision. And the employee went right to money. Oh, well, they're paying me more money. And I said, okay, I'm just curious about something. Let's just pretend we could pay you that money and more. Let's just pretend we could. So that's not even an issue. What's the second reason you're leaving this job? And that is when they started to talk. Well, I mean, the environment, right? And then they started to tell me that their leader was playing favorites and that it was uncomfortable, things like that. I even had one of them, it was so funny. She said, I'm actually one of the favorites. She said that, like, she plays favorites with me. Like, I get all the benefits of her leadership, but even I don't think it's fair. So money is a very easy thing to go to on both sides, because it's easy to sort of blame it. It's a way to sort of blame someone else, right? Oh, well, we don't have enough clients to have the money, or we're new, we're young, we don't make enough money yet. I mean, young company, we don't make enough money yet. Or, oh, this company's paying more money. But when you dig a little deeper, it's surprising how quick you start to find out what's really going on. So I say dig and find out.
Yeah, that's great advice. I wanted to ask you too about, from the hiring perspective, and again, apologies. I know that we had some people that joined late, so even if you already covered this a little bit, there's some people that have probably missed it.
Sure.
Can you just talk about how do as a company, your core values and your culture play into hiring?
Oh my gosh. So your core values drive everything, in my opinion. And I know, again, we're talking to smaller businesses here, which is good because you can define those core values. And one of the most important things I heard about defining core values is that those need to be things you're going to need to eat, live, sleep with forever. Don't say, oh, well, these are my core values for today, and then maybe I'll change them next week. You got to feel pretty confident that those are going to be your core values. I mean, that's how deep rooted they are. And then everything you do, your hiring relates back to those core values. So I share with you that one of ours is integrity, right? So when I'm hiring for my company, integrity is a really big piece. So if I see anything in the interview that shows me that person did not act with integrity, they're gone. I have no leeway, because that's so important to me, because I don't want anybody ever telling me a little lie. There is no lie that is good for me. I want my employees, another one of our values is accountability. So I want my employees to be accountable for what they did. Now that means that I also am going to hear them out and we're going to work through things. And they're not going to walk in here and get afraid that I'm going to scream at them every time. So that's so important in your hiring. And then that will be how you manage them. I mean, you go back to those core values. That is like, it's almost like, it's so funny. I'm doing a lot of writing on this right now because it is one of the things I think it's a secret to being a great leader that people sort of talk about, but really maybe we don't dive in that deep. But those core values they're like gold. So important. I cannot stress that enough. That's one of the first things I do with, so I get brought in a lot of time with leaders that are working on teams in varying parts in the company, right? And always talk to them about what their core values are, even as a leader. So if they work in a bigger company, the company may or may not have values, but I don't care. I want that leader to have values. If the company doesn't have them, I want the leader to come up with their core values because they can manage their team to that every single day.
Perfect. All right. Does anyone have any final questions for Anne? She's fantastic, right? You guys, I told you she's amazing.
Oh, thank you. This was really fun.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
This is such a huge part. And, we've got people that are in every phase of their business. So this is really good. Oh, we have another question, I hope. It's Carol saying.
It's a comment.
Oh, I got a terrific. So, thank you.
Yeah, this is great. It's really, really good. We really appreciate your time. And if
my pleasure.
I know, I want to, like, one thing, I know you touched on this a little bit when you were talking about hiring. And I know that we've talked about this, we've heard, Andy or Ed talk about this in Arate, Anne, but when you go from, when you're done hiring your friends and family, right? Which is your first hires, typically, like, hey, you got this friend who's great at whatever, or when you're ready to hire from the outside, that first hire, what are the things that you should be looking at or considering?
Well, okay. So I think that kind of goes back to the plan, right? So you should definitely be really clear, right? On the who piece is going to be so important, who you're looking for in that role. And you're also, I think what sometimes is hard once you start hiring outside of friends and family is that you realize that, and even if it's not friends and family, but there comes a time in a company, I sort of feel like it might be around 10 people, but maybe for some companies, it takes a little longer. There comes a time, I call it like a ripple effect, where you have people that are less committed to the original reason you started your business, right? So you're the owner, you're the most committed. And then you often can bring in your next layer is like down for the cause, right? And they're like, we're in, we know what you're trying to do, we're in. And then as you start to ripple out, it's harder to find people like that. That doesn't mean they're not going to be great employees, but your expectation of them like doing whatever it takes might be a little overblown, right? You might have to be realistic. It doesn't mean that they won't help you or they're just going to clock in at 8 out of 5. It doesn't mean they won't help you when asked, but it just might mean you have to be realistic in what that looks like. So I would say as you start to branch out past that initial maybe insular circle there, you're going to have to start realizing that you have to have that process, that plan down, and taking the time to hire really the best people you possibly can. And like I said, build a group. I mean, even if like you're just one and you're hiring your first person, get help you have other people that will help you. It's amazing. I've even had business leaders from other businesses help a business, if that makes sense. So for example, there's this water filtration company, and he was getting ready to hire a new person on his team and didn't feel like he felt like he needed help. He actually found a leader from a bigger water filtration company that said he would be more than happy to be part of that committee. And I was like, wow, like no money, no nothing, right? Not worried about competitiveness. It was like, no, we want the best people in this industry, and I'm more than happy to like share my knowledge and expertise with you and help you. So you'd be surprised, like reach out to people for help because they will help you.
That's yeah, you're right. That's absolutely true. The power of a network, right? And just asking, not being afraid to ask.
You gotta ask.
Yeah.
Ask. Yeah. Every time you're afraid to ask, that's when I always say you should ask.
Yeah.
that's when like great things happen. And what's the worst thing that happens, right? Somebody just says no. But like, even let's say, I mean, I had to say no to somebody the other day just because I don't have the time right now to help with something, but I referred somebody else who's going to be amazing, right? It's like, I can't do this for you. It was something that they needed me to sort of volunteer for. But I know somebody else who's going to be amazing for you. And so they got somebody out of it. And I think they're going to be great. So you just got to ask for help. It's so cool how people really want to help others. And I think everybody here, just think about that. When someone asks you to do something, it feels good and you want to help people. For the most part. I mean, we all want to help people. So.
That is so true. And also Carol made a great comment where she said, don't forget, if you haven't listened to the podcast that we did with Anne, go back and listen to it. It's very good. And Sean says, Anne's sensational. I think we all want to hire her to run our HR departments.
That's kind of what I end up doing for a living.
Yes, exactly. Oh, Anne, can you tell people the story behind your shirt?
Oh, my Hey Ann, I forgot I had it on. Yes, so I have a hashtag, it's Hey Ann. How it came about is that my marketing company that I was working with one day said, every time you tell us a story, it starts off like, Hey Ann, right? Hey Ann, I have a question. Hey Ann, I have a question. And so they said, you know what, we think you need your own hashtag. So it's Hey Ann, because everybody seems like starts off that way, that every single question. I actually have an Alexa skill. So if you have an Alexa, that's what it's called, right? Or whatever it's called. You guys know what I mean. I always forget what it's called. Yes. But yeah. So you ask Alexa, you say open Hey Ann. You have to download the skill. Super simple. Doesn't cost anything. You say open Hey Ann, and she will give you a leadership tip every single day. It's a different one every single day. So it was kind of a funny thing. It started off almost like a joke, like, because people always say, Hey Ann, Hey Ann, Hey Ann. And when I speak, like when I used to speak on stage, not so much as here, but it's that same thing. Like I would get off stage and people are like, oh, Hey Ann, Hey Ann. So it's just become a thing. So I have my hashtag. So if you ever want to go back and see like any of my other Instagram stuff or whatever, like if you just search hashtag Hey Ann, my stuff all comes up in one easy way to look through it.
Love it. Love it. All right. Anyone have any final questions for Anne? Okay.